Now you got to find the mute button, Wayne.
Welcome to Firefighting Today, the weekly video roundtable discussion show where we discuss all things fire service related. Firefighting Today is a production of PeteLamb.com. And now your host, Chief Peter Lamb.
Welcome, and thank you for being with us tonight. We appreciate everyone who dives on board and listens to the roundtable. We've got a pretty good-sized panel tonight, and we've got a lot of good information to share for sure. As always, when we tell you each week, if you are watching live on YouTube, you feel free to go over to the YouTube channel. There is a live chat set up. You can monitor and interact with the panel if you have any questions. And we are also tonight attempting to watch Twitter as best we can. So we'll take your information there. If you want to tweet something out using @PeteLamb, we'll be able to follow through. So first and foremost, I'm Pete Lamb from the Weekly Roundtable, obviously, but I'm also the host of the Firefighter Training Podcast as well. Let's introduce the panel. Chief Whitley, say hello.
Sorry, there's a little delay on the mute button. Hi, Warren Whitley, retired Assistant Chief, Prince William County, Virginia, and part of the Kill the Flashover project. And my disclaimer for this evening, I did spend 4 years on an aggressive truck company back in the 90s, and probably about the same time as an engine officer.
Okay, good. Lane, say hello, intro to the audience. You're still muted, Lane, if you can just do a quick unmute.
Okay, how's that? Sorry about that. Just still getting used to my tablet here. I'm out on the road here, away from home. Yeah, Lane Woolery, Battalion Chief, San Diego Fire Rescue.
Thank you. Kevin, say hello.
Hi, everyone. Kevin Burns. I'm a retired Deputy Fire Chief with Framingham Fire Department up here in Massachusetts.
Great. Thanks, Kevin. Chief Cagno, say hello.
Hi, everyone. Chief John Cagno, retired out of North Providence, and I spent most of my career on either a truck or a heavy rescue.
All right. So that's a perspective that we're coming at. My favorite fire service student, soon to be on the job, Ethan, say hello. Lost your audio, Ethan. Ethan, I'm going to go by you. You work on that audio thing, and I'll jump by you. Chief Pernesti, say hello.
Joe Pernesti, I'm with City of Elyria, Ohio Fire Department. Been on about 29 years. Elyria is just west of Cleveland, and my department runs 3 engine companies and a truck company, and I 29 years to spend time on both traditional duties of the truck.
Excellent. And last and not least, Charlie, and then I'll go back to Ethan. So Chief Hall, say hello.
Hi, everyone. Charlie Hall here in West Warwick, Rhode Island, retired fire chief, and spent most of my line duty at a truck company.
Okay, excellent. Let's see if we can roust up Ethan one more time. Ethan, give it a shot. No go, Ethan. I don't know if you're going to have to pop back in or not, but we're getting no audio from you. All right, you work on that. Welcome back. Jump back in. Certainly, we want to hear what you have to say. So I guess what I'll say for an opening statement, and let's just kind of try to figure out a couple of ground rules before we get started, and that is this. As I go to each panel member, what do you consider traditional truck duties versus engine duties? And then how many persons were on your truck company? Okay, how many persons were on your truck company, and what do you consider traditional truck company duties? Warren.
Well, what comes to mind for me is the normal forcing entry, ventilation, ladders, search and rescue, those types of activities. We ran 4 on a truck They may have 5 now. We had 4.
Okay, excellent, excellent. Lane, I'm guessing something similar as it relates to duties, but what's the staffing look like?
It's a 4-0 across the board, engines and trucks.
Okay, and we'll, all right, I'll go back on a second round for some procedural questions, but thank you for that. Kevin, truck companies, any duties other than what Warren said, and what was the staffing?
Yeah, I think Warren pretty much covered it, Chief, that old acronym Lovers U. I think Warren hit them all, maybe utilities. But we have 2 trucks in town, and they're staffed with a minimum of 3, sometimes 4.
Okay, good. Chief Cagno, staffing and any duties outside of what you already heard?
No, the same. Staffing's about the same, 3, sometimes 4. The trucks always get the extra guy when we're at full strength.
Okay. Ethan, just are you back? Let's give it a shot. Not back. We'll have to plug that in. Chief Pernesti, what do you got for staffing and any other duties that might be included?
No, just the same as everybody else. I like the Lovers U acronym in my town. Kind of apropos we talked about this tonight. We just had a contract where we won minimum staffing in a contract, very controversial up in my area. The person that we won in on our truck company, so it has a minimum of 4 people every day.
Okay, nice, nice. So the extra staffing is going to the truck company. Chief Hall, anything other in duties, and what were you running in the city at the time?
Basically, 2, 3 on a good day. 4 when we were topped off. Unfortunately, the floaters came from the truck companies. Ran 3 trucks, 6 engines, 3 trucks, a heavy rescue, and 4 ALS units. And search, rescue, ventilation, forcible entry, overhaul, salvage was one of our duties. And I enjoyed what we did, and I particularly enjoyed not having to chase the EMS units on EMS assists.
Yeah, so typically ladder companies get out of those routine assists in some agencies, So I actually worked in my career, I worked for 2 departments and just got rid of a department, finished with a department that had no ladder truck. I've been exposed to a lot of departments around the country that have, one of them sticks in my mind. It was a department down in Texas. We were talking about some issues. We were doing some online training. I said, do you have a ladder company? They said, no. I said, well, what's the closest mutual aid ladder company? And they said 35 minutes. I've talked to companies up in Canada that have the same situation. So I don't think that there's any question about duties per se, but if functions are the functions, I guess there is a thought in my mind, what do you do when you don't have those? Now, the department I just left, we had good access to ladder companies. We could get them on a mutual aid basis, but we did not have one with our own personnel and our own resources. So let me ask you just a real quick one. I'm going to run the panel again, and real quickly we will say, what was so assuming life safety, so primary search is part of the first due ladder. Does the first due ladder company go to a particular side of the building, and does the stick go to the roof automatically? Warren?
It was first truck to the side A and second truck to side Charlie if it was accessible, and yeah, they would ladder the roof.
Ladder to the roof, okay. And the 4 people, how does that get split up?
2 in, 2 out. So you had an outside crew doing utilities, throwing ground ladders and other support stuff, and then the 2 inside would be doing search.
Okay.
Forcible entry, engine company support.
Yeah, supporting the existing operation, sure. Lane, what's kind of just lay out the Cliff's Notes of your procedure? Where do the truck companies go, and do they go to the roof immediately?
Well, yeah, I was going to say, being the West Coast guy here, we just roll a little bit differently, commonly referred to as, the West Coast offense. Generally speaking, On a residential structure, the truck's going to go straight to the roof. Usually doesn't need forcible entry assistance on that kind of a building. So we get one truck on a residential, they go straight to the roof, and the engine companies do the advance and actually do the primary search. The truck's primary job, and we don't split the crew. It's all it's a captain and then 2 firefighters up there. We expect the engineer to stay at the rig and operate the aerial and the generators and such. And we're looking for the captain to be up on the roof supervising. And we're looking to get that roof open concurrent with fire attack in order to create some ventilation so we can actually conduct a decent search.
All right. Excellent. That's interesting because a lot of departments, and I'm sure we'll get some feedback if folks are listening, a lot of places do split the crew. In fact, in the city of Boston, quite frankly, it's not uncommon to send one man to a roof. That happens on a fairly regular basis. Chief Burns, a little bit about procedural stuff before we start talking about philosophy here. Kind of what is the SOP for the first and second truck, and does it go to the roof right away?
Yeah, Chief, pretty much as Chief Whitley said, the traditional front of the building, we try to hold that for the ladder. Try to put that turntable maybe close to the corner so we can hit 2 sides. We do put the stick up every time. It might not necessarily go to the roof to work, depending on the location of the fire and the duties that we need to perform. One little thing I'll throw out there, Chief, I used to like my ladder officer to take a quick lap to sort of reinforce what I had seen, in particular fire location, and in particular if there was a basement fire. That was kind of his special assignment, make sure this thing isn't in the basement. So that's pretty much it. And then if we needed a second truck, oftentimes it was more or less for manpower as opposed to the stick going to the roof. But hopefully if we positioned ourselves right, there would be a spot for him to get to the other side. Say if the first truck took the AD corner, hopefully the AB corner would be open to get that second stick in there if we had to.
Excellent. Excellent. Nicely done. Just take a minute. Connor is with us. Connor is saying in his volunteer department, he does not have a truck company. Closest one is 30 minutes away in rural Iowa. So thank you, Connor, for kind of validating what somebody would have probably thought I was making that up if you hadn't said that. So I appreciate you being with us, and feel free to jump in. Chief Cagno, kind of the procedural stuff, and does the stick go to the roof?
Yeah, we do similar to what Chief Burns said. We try to maximize the scrub of the stick. Always trying to get at least 2 sides if possible. We also split the team up. The officer usually goes in with the first line. We will, depending on fire conditions where the fire is located, opt to either send everyone inside if we believe that the roof does not need to be opened. If not, we send traditionally 1 guy to the roof when we're shorthanded. If everybody's there, there'll be 2 people, but the squad always backs up the truck company. As soon as the squad arrives, 1 member of the squad backs up the roof position. So there's usually always 2 people up there. Initially, there might be 1. If it's a top floor fire or a fire that's suspected to be in the attic or clock space, commercial building, then everybody goes to the roof.
Okay, excellent. And that's an interesting piece. I don't know if we'll have time, but we should revisit that. If we don't get through all the material, we'll revisit that. And that is the use of a heavy rescue being used as or supplementing a truck company. I think some of the departments have a heavy rescue. That'll be something to try. Let me reach back out to Ethan. Ethan, have you got audio back yet? Still no audio. I saw you unmuted, but still no audio. I think you'll have to try a reconnect. Chief Bernesti, kind of procedural, and you go to the roof, and where does the ladder company go?
Our truck always tries to take the front of the building. It's always staffed with a captain or a lieutenant filling in, acting up. So we fill that much of a responsibility that we pay riding up assignment if the captain is filling in for me or is off. We really don't have in my department a procedure where those 3 or 4 people, and we kind of make it, if it's a commercial building, if not, they're probably going to be in charge of search. Be my eyes and ears like a recon.
Okay. Excellent, excellent. And Chief, I'm going to have you shut off your video on the next round. You're breaking up a little bit, and I want to see if you shut video down if your audio gets better. So if you don't mind doing that on the next go around. And Chief Hall, certainly last but not least, procedural. Where does the truck company kind of go, and does the stick always go to the roof?
Our procedures were, well, the truck always gets the numbers in front of the building. And I got to back what Chief Burns said about the try to get the turntable even with the corner, either the 1-2 corner or the 1-4 corner. And with us, everything was, again, my favorite expression, incident dependent. Upper floors, fire in the loft, stick goes right to the roof. Rescue problem, the stick would go to the floor where the perceived rescue problem was. The second truck would come in and take the opposite side of the building, depending again upon geography. But we, if we did take the roof, we tried to get 2 sticks to the roof, one being a tower, one being a regular rear mount aerial. Again, into search and rescue. Not an advocate of splitting crews, and I would never send less than 2 to the roof.
Okay, but yeah, and you know what? That's a good point, Charlie. Good editorial point. I mean, it happens. I'm certainly not a fan of putting a single person up there, but the reality is we're trying to expose to an audience that's pretty far and wide, and it happens certainly. The other thing somebody mentioned was about recon, and I was just doing some homework to try to get ready for tonight and do some stuff. And we had a discussion last week or a couple of weeks ago about doing a 360. And there was some folks that were writing some stuff from DC about saying, if you've got this row house situation, you've got a long block, you've got something like that, maybe the roof man is the recon who can walk the roof, go across the back of the building, tell you what that alley looks like, tell you what size side C looks like, or what have you. And that might be easily done from the roof on a commercial or something like that. It might be the quick shortcut to the back of the block. So that's another interesting path. So the question is, who decides? And we're going to kind of go down a path now. Has the duties of and I'm going to look to Chief Whitley on this. I'll see if I frame up the question right. Have the duties of the traditional truck company changed with the advent of what's going on and all the discussions? Certainly the tasks have to be performed somehow. How has it been modified, or how should it be modified, or how could it be modified under current conditions? And I'll ask Warren to start that discussion.
So you want me to do the heresy first then?
No, I'm going to coach you. I'm going to throw the grenade out there, and you can go. Yeah.
Well, I brought up my notes from this class I had kind of put together and really haven't done anything with. But so for me, new truckee thinking is anti-ventilation, based on fire behavior models we have now. If we keep the fire bottled up, it's better for us. And some people don't agree with that, but that's okay. The other thing is using the tick for size ups, go, no-goes, and searches. You can stage your ground ladders next to the windows you shouldn't have broken. And the other big thing is asking the question, is this tactic going to cause fire decay or fire growth? So being cognizant of what, if you're going to ventilate, what's it going to do to your fire situation?
So, okay. So what you're trying to say is that maybe I don't, so typically, and I won't put words in your mouth, but I'll restate it just to see if we can get it out there, is that typically a truck company would operate and ventilate whether the engine company was maybe already there. It happens in some departments where truck companies go to work regardless of the engine company, or if the engine company might be slightly delayed. And I think we've seen some outcomes of that, and we've seen kind of how that works. Lane, in your world, is the truck company doing its thing prior, or is it an incident commander call, or is it the truck company officer that calls the shot there as it relates to ventilation?
You know, that's been a big change for us in terms of it used to be, yeah, cut early, cut often. Back when I was actually a guy with a chainsaw in my hands, it was cut as early and as often as you could. And in the last few years, based on the research, we have trained the behavior into our folks of coordinating their ventilation, making sure that water is either actually on the fire or within seconds of being put on the fire before they make the cut.
Okay. So that, and what would you say your percentage is now? Is it 50-50 or is it greater than 50-50? What's your success rate in implementing that policy, that theory?
You know, it works out pretty well, mainly because we have a lot more engines. We're about 4-to-1 ratio on engines to trucks. So it's not like it's very often the trucks are getting there first. More often than not, they're getting there either with an engine or after the engine. So usually there's a line stretched, you know, very often there's already water on the fire. And there are times where they'll get there a little bit late in the game and they'll decide, you know what, we're not going to cut. We'll just go ahead and use a blower. And I'd say a good 30% of our fires, we don't even cut the roof and we'll actually just go ahead and use a blower. The truck's task is ventilation to support the, the primary surge concurrent with extinguishment. And if that's a blower is going to get that done, they'll go ahead and do that.
So tell me a little bit. So is it positive pressure for ventilation purposes, or is it positive pressure attack that you're actually implementing?
Oh, no. It's always after water's on the fire. We've never done positive pressure attack. It's always just purely for ventilation purposes.
Okay, good. Kevin, your thoughts on where we're going here?
Yeah, Chief, I think the new, quote unquote, new stuff has had an influence on us. I know in my group when I ran it, I would say it was 100% compliance. We did not break windows. We did not open a roof until we had water on the fire, or just about have water on the fire. We did open roofs. I mean, I think there is still a need to do that, especially those 2.5 frames. I mean, I'm sure a lot of us on the panel have been, in those situations, trying to make that attic space. And boy, when they open that roof, it makes all the difference in the world. You can even hear it. Not only feel it, you can hear it. So, but that's with a line in place, ready to go. And I'll just throw out one thing for the audience. And Chief Whitley and his Killer Flashover gang, and Captain Stodd in particular, taught me this. And I never used it, but the guys who worked for me used it with great success, taking the tick to the roof to locate the seat of the fire, locating a hot spot on the roof decking. So that's one specific change that we made based on what Andy Starnes taught me.
Nice. Thank you, Chief. Chief Cagno, what's your thought here? I mean, there's a lot of discussion from traditionalists that, Warren's theory is detrimental to the victim. That's pretty common. I don't know where you stand on that, but where are you? Is the truck company going to work regardless, or is there a tighter, closer coordination?
Traditionally, in my department, the truck and squad were pretty much the eyes and ears for the IC. In other words, they were intel people as well as doing their traditional duties. They were responsible for locating the seat of the fire, avenue of spread, things like that. They weren't just in there doing the traditional functions. They also were doing a lot of intel work to assist the IC as to what was going on interiorly. We don't open the roof all the time. To go with Chief Burns is saying, obviously when the situation dictates, when we had the frame buildings, when you knew it was getting there, it would get opened up. But, platform construction, we would hold off. We have evolved. I can remember when, it was smash and bang and shaking up the building crazy years ago. Nowadays, it's more methodical.
Okay. Ethan, Let's give you another try. I don't know if you restarted. Did Ethan freeze up on us there? He may have. Chief Pernesti, where are you on this this current round of discussion here?
Well,
what are you thinking?
I think the truck company boss has to be probably one of the most educated fire officers on the fire scene. Discussion in the sidebar there that, you know, it's construction dependent, but the coordination is the key. That officer's got to coordinate, and there's been many line of duty deaths, particularly the one in Bryan comes to mind, Bryan, Texas, where the truck company boss was opening doors, and he did not communicate a heavy fire condition to the IC on a heavy, you know, when he opened one of the doors. So that kind of proves that truck company boss has got to be really on the ball and on the same page as the IC. Also, besides the construction dependent. In my town, we don't go to the roof and vent every single house fire, but it's at the top of my list due to the construction of the homes in my city and the commercials. I'm type 3 prevalent and balloon frames. So it has to be, I hate saying this, in the toolbox. And I have to be thinking vertical ventilation.
Okay, so yeah, right. Okay, so I don't disagree. I think building dependent, you know, obviously this all relates to size up. Everything we do relates to size up. So knowing what your building is and what your construction factors are. And listen, nobody knows your district like you. So or hopefully, you know, that's one of the messages we can leave here is when we were talking about ventilation issues, knowing the buildings in your own response district, I think are critical. Charlie, where are you on this issue? Automatically going to work, opening up? Has the thought process changed any? What are you thinking about this issue?
I'm right there with Kevin and Kags. I had the luxury of being in a three-piece house when I was a captain of a truck company, and we would train together. And one thing I emphasized was size up, size up, size up. We've got to look at what the building is telling us when we pull up, and that's going to basically determine what we do and how quickly we do it. But I would say that the truck company duties and the engine company duties had to be concurrent. When I knew that, for instance, if my crew took the roof and I knew that they were getting water on the fire, they would communicate that to me. We'd reach the fire floor and we'd start opening up, get the saws going and open up. And it worked out well for us. Again, size up, size up, size up. You have to know where you're going to open up, and you have to communicate with the engine company to know when they're getting at or very close to the seat of the fire, so we can open up for them.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. You know, it's funny. We just used a phrase just a couple minutes ago. We used a phrase, and it kind of struck with me. I think about going back to the old red books. And the old Oklahoma State manuals, the little tiny books, they were almost like pamphlets, for God's sakes. And, you know, it was always have a charge line when you vent. You know, that goes back forever. That's not new info. What happened is we just had companies going to work venting without having a charge line in place at the seat of the fire. So I think that was part of the discussion. I think we maybe have strayed or did stray. I think we're coming back to center, but I think we maybe had strayed some point. But having a charge line when you vent has been a principle for lots and lots of years. Chief Cagno.
Yeah, to go along with what you're saying, the truck company officer has to be listening to the radio, as well as other companies. A lot of times you go to a commercial building and you know it's going to take a little longer to open up, or you know, you have some other obstacle. You got to give that message to the incident commander or the engine company boss that's stretching the initial line, so they know that that ventilation is not going to happen early and often. But we also became, I think, a better coordinated department in that perspective. When you go back to, like you said, the older days and the way we did things versus how we've evolved, I think there's a better integration, so to speak, between engine and truck company operations, at least in some of the departments that have trucks. We work more cohesively versus independently minded. We may be doing independent operations, but we're not independently minded. We're on the same page operationally.
Okay, makes sense. Question from the chat room. Is any of the panel not opening up to support suppression until a certain temperature is reached? Is anybody actually paying attention that we're not going to open up to support suppression until we get to, you know, I think Warren used the phrase go, no go, those kinds of things. Anybody show of hands if anybody's actually doing that or paying attention? Warren, that's similar to what you were alluding to, I believe, right?
No, the go, no go is actually your entry before introducing water.
Right.
Let's say you get to the door, the entry door, and hopefully you're not going in one where you just made a flow path. You have a curtain up, or you're controlling the door. If it's over 500 degrees at the ceiling, you need to put water in ahead of you and mitigate that.
Right. But is anybody checking, you know, using the TIC, relaying info to the incident commander prior to making a ventilation decision? I would say, looking at the panel, the answer to that is probably no. So for the chat room, that was probably no on that particular answer. So what do we do? What do we tell these folks that are in rural areas? So now I got a 4-man crew. I'm on an engine company. That's how I arrived. And you talk about these lovers. Oh, wait a minute. Lane wants to dive in. Please, Lane, go ahead.
Well, no, I was just going to say, to your point there about what do you tell a guy from a rural company that's, you know, got maybe 4 guys and stuff and no truck company in sight. You know, I mean, obviously vertical ventilation is a big part of what we do out here out west, you know, mainly because it doesn't snow out here. And so most of our roof pitches are walkable. We don't have to worry about a roof ladder or anything like that. But if you're shorthanded, rural area, thing like that, I would not perform vertical ventilation or commit resources to that at the expense of getting water on the fire.
Okay, you know, sensible. The other thing I think that people underestimate, we've got some experienced truck company officers here, so I don't think that's the case. And we've got some fairly urban departments. But I think that, you know, the other situation is, I think people underestimate how long it takes to create a roof hole. You know, if you're doing it with ground ladders or whatever, you throw a 24, you throw a roof ladder up, and then you're cutting some sort of vent hole, whatever it is they say this week that a vent hole size should be. And how long does it actually take to do that? I'm going to go to Chief Pernesti first, and then you, Charlie. Chief Pernesti, dive in. And you might as well turn your video on. It didn't improve the audio at all, Joe.
Okay, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. Dive in.
We talk about it every panel. I guess we can't get away from it. One of my biggest pet peeves is the social media sensation that the roof operations, the roof, you know, beautiful videos of chopping holes and lots of smoke. And I think that romanticizes. It's a lot easier said than done. And so your point about getting up on the roof and how difficult and how time consuming that is, you are absolutely right. But I worry that social media and that, and you know, departments or younger chief officers are just going to the roof because they've seen a video, and we have to be very careful of that. So that's what I wanted to add. But you're absolutely right. That has to be emphasized. It is not an easy task to carry out.
Yeah, no, I think that's, you know, that's a typical situation. I give assessment exams and things like that, and somebody will snap their fingers and say, okay, the roof's open. And I'll just kind of drag my feet for another 10 minutes until I decide the roof is open, because that's probably not going to happen as instantly as they believe it is. Chief Hall, go ahead.
I'm going to back 100% what Chief Bernesti just said. It's a very labor-intensive operation. And in my department, we didn't cut a hole any smaller than 4 by 4, 4 feet by 4 feet. And I was a big advocate of what we jokingly called the Charlie Hall hinge cut. Used to cut 3 sides, top and 2 sides, and get a pike pole and flip the cut back towards you, and almost like a hinge. It accomplished 2 things. Number one, the spot that we cut, although the part that we cut did not fall through and perhaps injure somebody down below. And secondly, if you did what we called the hinge cut, it made it easy to button up afterwards. But 4 feet by 4 feet was my minimum. And I always said, make one big hole instead of a lot of small ones, because you're wasting your time with small vent holes. But if you're going to vent right, vent big or go.
Okay. Chief Cagno.
Yeah, to go on with the Chief Hall saying, a lot of times people think vertically versus horizontally. Sometimes getting in there, you can accomplish 2 things. You can do the interior switch and more effectively open up the building from a ventilation standpoint horizontally versus vertically. But when you're going vertically, you got to make sure the fire and the smoke coming out of that hole is a lot bigger than what's coming out from around the soffits and things like that. And I think we to do that in some places.
Yeah, I think that's the case. Warren, do you want to talk a little bit about Lane? You got something you want to dive in? He may have just been adjusting. Warren, you want to talk about when, so I've got the front door open, I got a line in the building doing something, whatever. And then I vertically ventilate. So I'm creating a flow path that may or may not be effective. What's the effect if I start creating other intakes? Suppose I do take a lot of glass when I've got this, this roof hole open. What's kind of talk a little bit about how I'm affecting the flow?
Well, you can go on YouTube and find all sorts of neat videos where they've now caused a firefighter-induced hot rich flashover. Any openings you make that are connected to the fire somehow are going to develop a flow path. It may be an inefficient or relatively inefficient bidirectional flow, but you're going to add air to the fire if it has access. So unless those interior doorways are shut, cutting off the supply, one that wouldn't do you any good anyway. But you're just helping the fire grow.
Okay, that was an interesting term, firefighter-induced flashovers, or you know, those kinds of events. Sometimes I think that I've looked back on a number of fires that I was at or in command of, and you had some sort of significant event that took place. And, you know, as I reflect back on it now, as I become a student of this, I caused most of those. You know what I mean? And then the fire blew out the window. Well, I know how that happened because I was probably the guy that made that happen by order or by personal action or what have you. Lane, jump in.
Yeah, you know, it's funny. Turns out, you know, without having the knowledge that we've gained in here in the last 5 years, we were doing a lot of things right. One is that the engines have always been very aggressive about getting that first pre-connect off and getting water on the fire. And then also we've never had the position of somebody called the outside vent man. So therefore there's been no one person that felt obliged to take out every window in the building. So when there has been a poorly timed roof cut made, there hasn't been every window in the building taken out concurrently with that, creating a bunch of intakes. And it seems like if you're going to choose one method to be uncoordinated, it's better to be uncoordinated vertically than horizontally, because it seems like the mixing occurs better and faster with horizontal ventilation than it does with vertical ventilation when you screw it up.
So Lane is, one of our takeaways tonight is pick when you screw up. I like it. I'll write that one down because, but no, that's well said. I think that does make a difference. And, you said the OVM, right? I mean, that is common position in many fire departments today, in a lot of major fire departments. That still is a very real position. And, whether, again, if you don't have that position, it's not your worry. But if you don't, if you do have that position, again, coordination, I think I've heard 4 or 5 times from the panel tonight. I think coordination always becomes the key there, certainly. So tell me about Chief Cagno. Go ahead. Chief, you're muted.
Two things. The outside Batman often has been very successful as to the outcome of the fire, because a lot of times he's in the right position and, via radio times it with the engine company. So he might be taking out that clutch just when the engine company needs it. The other thing is, if you remember, we used to always be told, like in the older commercial blocks, that we wanted to open up to bring the fire, towards us so that we didn't get caught inside in too deep. I know that the philosophy has changed a bit with thermal imaging and what KTS is doing, but there are times when you do need to open up to sort of liven the fire so you don't get caught too far down the hallway with fire traveling over your head and beating you to the door.
Yeah, no, that makes some sense. I get it. I mean, the point is, if we're letting stuff out, we're drawing the heat and smoke and fire away from us. I think that, if I'm going to be honest with the panel and the listeners, if I'm going to be honest, I got to tell you, I've seen some 4x4 roof vents with some 2-foot by 2-foot poke throughs through the interior ceiling. I've seen some great roof. I've seen some 4x4. I've seen 6x6 roof cuts, and the wood was still good and nothing was charred and no smoke ever came out of the hole. So, and that can happen with any situation. I've seen charged hose lines that never made it to the seat of the fire as well. But, we have to think about where we've gone with this situation. So let's get back to the question. What is it? So Lane had one suggestion for these people that don't have a truck company. Don't worry about vertical ventilation right up front. I think that's a great answer. Throw some water on the fire is obviously a great answer. What else do we have for these folks? So I'll take Chief Hall and then Chief Pernesti. Chief Hall, and then Warren.
The companies, rural engine companies, let's call them. I come from an urban fire service, so I can't preach to rural fire companies to tell them how to equip their rigs. If it's me and I'm running a company in a rural setting without a truck, I'm going to make sure that engine company is outfitted with an extra complement of ground ladders, to wit, probably a 35-footer. If it's needed, they have it to use. And a chainsaw does not take up that much space. I'm sure they could find the compartment space or someplace on that engine company to mount the box for a chainsaw. And hopefully, if they're running with a number of people that they're gonna need, somebody mentioned 4 on a rural engine company. Hopefully, if need be, they can do a vertical vent. Probably not going to be high on their list of things that they're going to want or need to do. They're going to want to do. They may need to do it. Hopefully, they recognize it and they're able to accomplish that. But again, just to reiterate, if it's me, I'm going to put I'm going to make sure that engine company rides with a 35-foot ladder. And I speak from experience because in my department we had 2 outlying engine companies that didn't have a ladder company coming in with them for probably 8-9 minutes. So we made sure that those 2 companies were outfitted with 35-foot ground ladders. They always ran with a minimum of 4 personnel, just in case that needed to either catch the roof or get somebody, in an upper floor window.
Excellent. Chief Pernesti.
I agree with Chief Paul. I would like to suggest, again, I'm in an urban setting, but maybe a suggestion to those that don't have it is to gather your officers in a meeting one day, write on the board, Lovers U, the acronym that we utilize, or most departments utilize for truck company duties, and then L for ladders. Okay, what do we have for ladders? O for overhaul. All those kind of things, and then take those acronyms and apply them to what you have, and what you can offer, and what you don't have, and that's probably a start. But to think that to say, well, we don't have a truck, so we can't go to the roof. There's lots of duties that you can do, and I think it's pretty simple. It doesn't matter what you arrive on; it's what you do when you get there.
Yeah, no, the duties are the duties, and I think that's important. From the chat room, as a rural urban service, our second engine company is usually tasked with traditional truck work. Saws and equipment may be located on both engines. So that's Peter. Peter was an early on panel member when it was still a sin. Peter, great to have you in the chat room. Join us. Feel free to join us anytime you wish. So there's a case where they have put the appropriate equipment on the both engine companies, and they've said the second due engine is the truck company per se. So that's a good method of doing it. Chief Cagno.
For the rail departments, I think you could solve part of this problem when you inspect an apparatus. A lot of departments can't afford a truck company. They're $750,000 nowadays for an average truck company. So, when you're purchasing an engine company in a rural area, like Chief Paul said, you can spec maybe full depth compartments on the rig so you can carry an assortment of truck company tools, or maybe coffin boxes or roof boxes or whatever to just carry the additional equipment that basic equipment that a truck company would carry. And then again, the addition of a 35 versus the traditional 24 or smaller ground ladder. So spec apparatus could be a solution to a problem in some of the rural departments.
Yeah, and obviously that's a financial cost. I'll go to Lane in just 1 minute. Connor again says most of the engines in his area have roof saws, 24-foot, and roof ladders. He says that positive pressure ventilation is a big thing there where he is in Iowa, and going to the roof is not common. So again, just a different perspective. It's one of the things I like about this panel and the amount of reach we have is where, we've got some very urban areas represented here on the panel, and we are servicing an audience that's much farther and wider. I'm sure our folks up in Canada are thinking the same kinds of discussions. Real quickly, we didn't talk about, we kind of went down a ventilation path. Let's just run the panel real quickly. What's your expectation? Well, two things. One of the things I'd like to say is this: if you don't get perfect placement, you're a ladder company, you don't get perfect placement, one of those darn engine guys took up the front of the building or whatever happened, or took the corner position or what have you. If you're a ladder company and you don't get your good space, come walking down the street with a couple of ladders. Take those ladders from the truck company, take the ground ladders off and bring them down to the A side of the building so they can be thrown. You can stretch hose, you can't stretch a ladder. So if a proper ladder company, maybe it's a mutual aid company, have them come walking down the street with a 35 or a roof ladder or a couple of things. That's always a good technique as well. You'd love to say if you had all the time in the world and all the resources. Let's just talk about off the ventilation path for a minute. Chief Whitley's right. You get these long driveways where the truck company can't get down them. I mean, that's a great case for making sure the ladders end up on the scene. We spent some time talking about ventilation. Where do you want ladders thrown at your fire? I know you'd love to say everywhere, but have you got a priority where you want ladders thrown for either victim rescue or for us? What's your guideline? Anybody on the panel? Charlie?
My rule of thumb always was and still is, if you're using ground ladders, if you throw one, throw two. You need to have, like to create two egress points off the roof or off the floor that we're operating on, just in case things go sideways and the unforeseen happens and you find yourself caught between you find the fire gets between you and the ladder that you took to wherever you were going, whether it be an upper floor, roof, or what have you. So my rule of thumb was always, if you throw one, throw two. I was one of two showing. Two showing 5 rungs above the roof so everybody could see them. And all our ladder tips were painted fluorescent orange for that reason.
Right. Lane, you want to comment in on that?
Yeah, that's, one area where my organization has really improved over my tenure is we've really created a much, we're nowhere near where like Boston Fire would be, but we have really created much more of a ladder culture. And it's our engineers who are outside, and typically, if you're the second or third due engineer, the apparatus operator, you really don't have as much to do. Sort of culturally taken to the point where those guys start getting ladders, they start pulling 24s off of the other pumps and start throwing them up against the buildings. And that's been a real positive change here over the last 10 years or so with us.
Yeah, excellent. It's good use. As you said, of course, there are engineers that are now insulted. You're going to have to bring cookies tomorrow because what do you mean we're not busy? So you'll have to do that. Chief Burns.
Chief, I just wanted to throw in one specific thing, and I was taught this. I didn't invent it, but again, I mentioned the 2.5-story woods earlier. We always try to throw a 35 to the front where that window is. So the guys knew in particular there was that spot. If they were in that attic and they got in trouble, they knew for sure there'd be a 35 waiting for them thrown to the sill of that top story window. So just wanted to throw that in.
Yeah, no, that's a great. The 2.5-story wood here in New England is our fire. It may be less common in. Well, I'm sure Warren had some of those as well. A lot of places. So if if your department's practice is picking a window and always having one there, that's a window that you can generally pick or designate all of the time. So that makes good sense. What else do we need to cover as we're going to begin to start doing summary statements? What do we want our listeners to take away from tonight? And I'm not there yet, but on our next round, we'll probably start making summary statements. Chief Cagno, what do you want to add?
Additionally, since we're on a lot of topic, for the rural departments or the departments that don't have existing truck companies, you got to get out there and practice throwing ladders, especially your bigger 35s or whatnot, for those departments that have even larger ones. You got to practice it, and don't practice it in the simple operations like in the drill yard or the back of the firehouse. Go on site, go in the irregular shaped buildings, the townhouses, the condo projects, things like that, and where you have not only height problems but just access, just getting around vehicles and down the alleyways to get a ladder up to the building. You got to get out there and practice raising ground ladders. I don't think any department does that enough.
No, I think I would agree. I want to bounce off of Lane's comment as well. I mean, I think there are two departments. Listen, there's a lot of great fire departments all across the country. I don't mean to say this, but I would tell you that there are probably two departments. If you want to look at some YouTube videos or you want to look at some stuff going on, I'm not sure that anybody throws ladders better than the city of Boston or the city of San Francisco. I mean, there are a lot of departments that do it well and do it very good, but I think those two traditionally, if you see a working multiple alarm fire in Boston, there are probably 4 to 5 aerials up in the air at different floor levels, and there's ground ladders. I mean, it's some days I look at the photographs and the videos and I'm not sure if it's ground ladders or scaffolding I'm looking at because there's so many of them around the building. So there's some good stuff to be learned by doing that. So we're going to run the panel. Just tell me when you're ready to give some summary statement. What we were talking about was truck company versus engine company. is the philosophy the same? Should we be teaching? Remember, we started this because it was dedicated truck companies and dedicated engine companies. Has that line blurred at all now? And have the duties been modified? Is the philosophy still the same? Does somebody want to take us down that path and lead us off with a summary statement? Warren, thanks for jumping in. I appreciate it.
The lines may be blurred, depends on the department. We talked about what resources you have and don't have and how you can adapt. From my perspective, on the fire behavior side, it needs to be changing. If you show up on a vent limited fire and you have a chance to keep it that way, I'm an advocate taking care of business while it's still vent limited and not making things worse. Vertical ventilation on modern residential construction, I don't even trust the guys up there putting shingles on the roof of that structure. So vertical vent on modern construction residential for me is really probably not going to happen. Your 2.5s in New England, old style, strong construction, yeah, there's times when it would be certainly useful, as long as you know what the outcome is going to be when you make that hole. So I think the big takeaway for me, for folks, is to make sure you're looking at the construction elements and the fire behavior piece of the puzzle. And again, is your tactic going to make it grow or decay? We like decay.
Yeah, well said. Thank you. Lane, what do you got for a summary statement for the listeners?
Well, absolutely, coordination is essential. But the one thing I can tell you from having evaluated and trained a lot of truck company crews is that if you think you just build a roof prop back behind your station and do some cuts on it, think you're ready to conduct vertical ventilation, you're sorely mistaken. It's most truck companies, when they fall short, they break down usually between the rig and the roof. It is, it starts from when the brake sets, the compartments, who grabs what tools, getting to the roof, getting to the cut site. There's a million things that go wrong with that operation. And if you don't work the whole operation bottom to top on the drill ground and on acquired structures and things like that, you will have less than satisfactory results.
Yeah, well said. Nicely said. Good summary. I do have a comment in the chat room. This is entirely a whole different episode, Connor. It's not, I'm not going here now, but this is a whole episode. And Connor says, where does today's quint belong in the fire service? So we can have a whole quint discussion, but that'll be a good one for sure. That's not for tonight's topic for sure, but thank you for that, Connor. We will do that. Chief Burns, summary statement.
Yeah, Chief, we didn't get into any good-natured ribbing about engine versus truck work. I think I spent more time on an engine than these guys, my panel members, did. Although I did spend a few years on the truck. But I'll throw a little humor out. If your house was on fire and your family was trapped, who would you want to show up, an engine or a truck? And I'd pick an engine. Right. So that's a little joke, but I'm going to go before 4 new hires tomorrow, Chief. My old chief asked me to come in, and I've got a little orientation for them, and I'm going to emphasize engine company work. That's what I want them to be good at: stretching hose, making a hydrant, being good with their SCBA. Those basic engine company ops, boy, you can do a lot of good work if you're proficient in engine company ops with good support from the truck.
Yep, well said. Chief Cagno, summary statement.
Boy, I didn't expect that. Anyway, for summary statement, I think coordination. We've evolved. There has been significant changes with the whole behavioral perspective and how tactically we're attacking fires now. So I think as a truck company, what we traditionally used to do has to meet that expectation. We have to kind of grow with the times. We can't do it the old ways anymore. We have to get up to speed, so to speak. We can still do a lot of the things we used to do that are important, but we need to kind of evolve into the whole dynamics of the way we're operating at fires and match that from a truck company's perspective.
Okay, Chief Pernesti.
I would say that you look at it as like a football team. You don't see too many football teams running the wing T. And if you're running your truck company with that type of philosophy in today's fire ground, you're not going to make it. So I think you have to have truck company operations, but you have to be well aware of what's going on in today's fires to be successful. And then add in that coordination, which is part of it. So, you know, the old black books and all that as a guideline, but you can't run today's fire scenes like that as far as old school ventilation mentality and truck company duties.
No, I think you're right. You'll never believe this, Chief, but so all night your audio's been spotty, and the last words you said, that was the best audio we got out of you tonight. It was just, oh, well, you know, that's good. Chief Hall, summary statement for the listeners.
I'd like the listeners to take away, in addition to what my esteemed colleagues have brought forth, all excellent comments. I'd like to add in practice. Coordination and communication is of the utmost importance. I can't emphasize the communications aspect enough. You got to get to the point where one knows what the other's doing, even before they're doing it, and that you're going to get there by training and practice. And I think I'm not sure who said it. It might have been Lane about in the drill yard with the prop. If you think you're going to be proficient at vertical ventilation after doing that, you're sadly mistaken. In our environment, you're going to get up on a snow-covered roof at 2 o'clock in the morning with the wind howling and make sure you're cutting in the right place. In concurrent operations with the engine company, advancing a hose line and getting water on the fire. And we need to pay attention to the changes going on around us. And yeah, things have changed, but sometimes the more things change, the more they stay the same. So I'm an old school guy, and I still believe in the division of duties on the fire ground, but I'm always willing to listen. Thank you.
All right, so that concludes where we are tonight. We covered a lot of ground. We talked about some new stuff. I think that I think the things that I heard, the coordination, communication, certainly excellent stuff. But I also think that today's fire, the compartments have changed, the fuel package has changed, so the way we operate might have to change a little bit. Our thinking might have to change. I appreciate everybody that listened in. I appreciate it. Circulate this to you folks. You can take the link and put this out and circulate it. So if you didn't get to join us tonight, you're able to watch this a little bit later on. It's good stuff. And we will see you here next week. We will see you next Sunday evening, 8 p.m. Eastern time. We'll have another panel discussion, and we hope that you'll be able to join us then.